Last thing is a point presser. This is typically only used in the industry when you're making collars, but if you are doing a lot of sewing at home, you can use this to press out the points of your collars here. You can also use it, the rounded edge, to press your shirt sleeves if you don't have a sleeve board. This is not often used, but I have at home before I had a sleeve board. Use this edge, just put a little padding on it, and you're able to use that as a sleeve board. And then you also have just a flat end here. So those are your pressing tools. And next we're going to move on to our pinning tools. Okay, so we're on to the pinning equipment, and you have a variety of pins. I know most of you probably think, oh, there's just, one pin. But no, we have the silk pin, which is just your basic pin used for finer fabrics and has a very sharp point. If you can see that there, it has a very sharp point. Just your basic silk pin used for any type of pins. The next thing is the ballpoint pins. I do not have any ballpoint pins. I used to, but they get mixed up, and a lot of the kids don't like them just because the points on them are like a ink pen. They're more rounded. So if you look at this ink pen here, you can see how the tip has a more rounded tip, and this is actually a fine tip. So it has a little bit less round. Than this one. So you can see this one is more rounded. That is exactly what your pins look like. They would look like this, but the ends of them would just be round on the tip instead of so pointed. Those are used for knit fabrics and also fabrics that would snag easily, such as satins. So that's what the ballpoint pen is. The next is the ball-headed pen, and a lot of students get the ball-headed pen mixed up with the ballpoint. So what you have to remember is this is the point down here of your pen. This is your head. So if it has a little decorative piece on it or a round dot, that is your ball-headed pens. And then the end would be your the point. Okay, so this is your ball-headed pen. The next thing is the T pen here, this giant pen. It actually looks like a T. This is used a lot of times in the garment industry. Whenever they stack fabrics, let's say 100 ply high, they need to be able to keep them in place, so they'll just stick this straight down in there. They also use this in quilting a lot of times, or when they're going through thick layers of fabric. You can see it's really big and sturdy. This is used when pinning through thicker pieces of fabrics. I even use these when I'm doing alterations on bridal gowns or prom gowns that have thick beading, and it's hard to get other pins through those. And the last thing is this pin cushion here. Everyone's seen a cute little pin cushion. Looks like a tomato with a strawberry attached to the end. And what you may not know about the strawberry is that it contains emery. Emery is like, I know this is old school and some of you may not know this, but if you've ever heard your grandmother say, honey, can you go get me an emery board? She's talking about a nail file, and it's just glorified sandpaper. So basically there's emery pieces in this bag, and if your pins get dull or they get a little snag on them, all you have to do is just stick them in the emery here like this a few times, and you can feel it. There's little beads in there, but you stick that in there, and then it sharpens up your pins on the edges. So those are your pinning equipments. Now we're going to the cutting equipment. We have your dressmaker shears, which I have 2 pair here. This is the first pair. You can see that the bottom is flat. So whenever we go to cut out our fabric, we actually are going to keep our scissors on the table like this. and you can just go down and keep the scissors on the table so that you have a nice straight cutting edge. This is another pair of, this is your typical pair, what a lot of people use. These are your dressmaker shears, and here again, they're not completely flat on the bottom, but they work the same exact way. So, you know, as you're cutting, you just cut right down that line right there, and keep the bottom of your scissors on the table so you get a nice straight cut. The next thing that we have are just your basic sewing scissors. The basic sewing scissors have a small round handle usually. These are not exactly sewing scissors. They're typically just two little round handles. They're heavy duty somewhat, and they're used for clipping your corners when we make your pin cushion and your pillows. And also clipping curves. You can use these to do just minor sewing things. So when we clip our curves, or notch out our curves for a shirt sleeve or a bust line or a neck, you can use these. The embroidery scissors, you can tell if you look at them, they have a curved edge here, and this is anything that's been embroidered with a logo on it. If you can just go right along the edge of your fabric here and clip the strings off so that it does not cut your fabric or cut into the actual embroidery that you did. This is just an example here of you know, a piece of fabric, and I don't know if you guys can actually see these little strings, but what it does is it allows you to cut, it would allow you to cut flat without actually taking any of your other stitches out. So if it were embroidered here on the actual fabric, you can just go and clip those little tiny stitches off, or little tiny threads off, and also be able to do some detailed work within the embroidery, like getting out the interfacing that is in the back to keep it stiff. So embroidery scissors are just 3 to 4 inches long. They have a very pointed tip here. You can see the very pointed tip. And also they're great for trimming out buttonholes and your threads, embroidery threads. The next thing is going to be your best friend, and this is called a seam ripper. And what this does, see, it has this little tiny, let's see if I can get this as for the background here and focus on it. So it has this little tiny blade, and you can slide this in between your seams as you sew, or after you've sewn something together and you need to take it out because it's not perfect, or if you're doing alterations, then you can use this handy dandy seam ripper, which, like I said, is going to become your best friend. The next thing is a thread clipper, and this is your, you know, they're just a little spring-loaded clipper that is used for clipping threads. This is an example of a thread clipper. This is an example of a thread clipper here. You can tell they spring right back open, so you can trim those threads really quick. But I also wanted to show you, this is what is actually tied to each one of your sewing machines. And you know, these will be sanitized each day and each time that we use them. If you prefer to bring your own, you can bring your own, just a simple basic pair of scissors here, and keep them in your drawer, and that way you can use them your own yourself. But we use these as our snips or thread clippers just because I can tie them to the table and leave them there so they don't go anywhere. The last thing is a rotary cutter. Okay, here we go. I had to unlock it here. So it has that safety feature there so that you can unlock it. But you see that the blade comes out of the underside, and the way that this is used is to cut straight edges and bias pieces. It looks like a pizza cutter, and it's also great for being able to cut through multiple pieces of fabric at a time. when you are cutting, let's say, quilt squares or something. So the way that it works is you take your fabric and you have to use this self-healing mat here that I have it on. It almost feels like a thick rubber mat. You have to use the self-healing mat, and you basically just take and roll this across. When I was making face mask, and actually when you guys come back, we're going to make a face mask. So, and this blade needs to be sharpened here, you can see. A lot of times, even with a duller blade, you can cut through more layers of fabric easier than you can cut through one. So you can tell that, you know, that's how that rotary cutter works, but I need to tighten up the blades here and also get some new ones for these. So that is your rotary cutter, which resembles a pizza cutter, used with the self-healing mat. Now I'm going to grab another pair of pinking shears so that you can see how those work to take off the frayed edge and keep a piece of fabric from fraying. Okay, so I have the pinking shears here, and you can see that this fabric has a frayed edge right there. We're going to cut the edge off. I think I need some new pinking shears. Maybe I'll need to put that on my list of goodies that I need to request. So now you can see that I have this X or zigzag here, and when I try to pull the yarns off, it will not allow it to continue to come off. That one is coming out just because I didn't cut it well, or these scissors are not so great. But if I come down here and I try to pull this, it won't fray anymore. Whereas when I turn it to the other side over here, this, you can see that these yarns will just pull right off if it has not had a finished edge put on it with the either a serger or the zigzag stitch on the sewing machine or the pinking shears. So the pinking shears just helps keep things from fraying. You can tell the difference there. Next we